یکی درمان پسندد. Now those who accept sorrow as their temperament, they have a great capacity to live with pain, to live with conflict, to live with yearning and longing. And they're not looking for answers. You know, I mean, I don't know if you've seen, the Rambo movies. This is a guy who came to realize that he's just a soldier. And he tried to run away from it, but, life comes for him and says, no, you can't just be a civilized human being living in Richmond or Oakland, and in a house just calmly and peacefully. That's not the way you work. You just need to be a soldier. So in every movie, this guy tries to find some calm, but things just happen where he goes out and kills like 5,000 people within a span of like an hour and a half. So the next kind of concept in this first line is that, yes, it is true there are those people who seek, sorrow. But there are also those who don't enjoy sorrow. They don't want to be sad. They don't want to live with like a spiritual toothache. They want to find a remedy, they don't want to be wanderers like Jesus Christ. They don't want to have any plans. I mean, that's when you find a remedy, it's like you have a plan now. Something about your spirit has calmed down. You're no longer on fire. That whatever your pain or sorrow, whatever your longings and yearnings, they have now been put to rest. I know you guys are jealous. You want to laugh like that. You can't. It's finished. So there are those who don't have a great capacity to endure a lot of pain and sorrow. And that is how they're made. Someone inspires them to ask. That asking turns into a spiritual yearning. And they don't want to live in that conflict for the rest of their life. They want an answer. Now, the thing with answers are this. And I don't know how true it is. It's kind of like being hungry, like tonight. You guys had to wait for 5 hours for food to be served. And while the food is in there, all you think about is food. And when you have the answer, you have the food, after a while you become uninterested in it. And the moment you are full, the moment you are saturated, the moment you are fulfilled, something really strange happens. You begin to talk about your experience. You become a lecturer. You become a professor. You have answers, but there is no yearning inside you anymore. You speak with a full stomach. You become arrogant, hubris. For some it's true. For others, it may not be. I don't know. But I don't know if anyone can remain uncontaminated if you have been given an answer. And I don't know what a spiritual answer really is, because as long as you're a human being, I think you're always going to run into difficulties. Life is never going to stop offering you events that puzzle you and kind of betray you in some shape or form. So the first thing is, at least in the first line, there are those who enjoy sorrow. And then there's a category of people who enjoy remedies to their sorrow. If you are mature, you have to make sure that the answers don't contaminate you. If you're mature, you have to make sure that the sorrows don't get you depressed in a way where everything about your life becomes meaningless and you become a beast, in the sense that you will no longer be able to have any relationships with anyone, including yourself. So we are talking about very special qualities of sorrow and its remedy. You know, that there is nothing wrong with having sorrow live inside you for the rest of your life. You just need to be like Baba Taher. Be a poet. If you can be a poet, be a celloist. If you can be a celloist, be a pianist. Be an instructor in the classroom where you speak about sorrow in an eloquent way. You know, if you can't do that, well, maybe you should just go to the gym and beat the heck out of the boxing bag. You know, you just have to do something. Sorrow is something that can't just sit still. It needs to flow. Okay? So again, if your temperament is sorrowful, make sure you're creative with it. If your temperament is one that desires answers because they can't live with sorrow, okay, make sure you have enough awareness about you that the answers that you have on the spiritual path, they don't make you hubris and arrogant. Okay? You know, we have this, not we, I don't mean to include myself in this tradition, but there is this saying that a teacher is always invisible. You know, and I think it's so true. You know, there is something to be said about, I don't know, being on the stage where you have thousands of people or hundreds of people looking at you as if, you know, there is something you can do for them. I mean, you can do something for them which is inspire them while they're there listening to you. But the moment they leave the auditorium, you know, 10, 15, 20 minutes, maybe a day, maybe 2 days later, you're completely forgotten. You know, you have no utility in their life. And one of the ways I think you kind of keep yourself from being contaminated by remaining invisible. You're not going out there and trying to shine all the time. Yeki vaslo, the second line, yeki vaslo, yeki hijran pasandad. And really it's very much like the first line, that some people seek union. You can't look for an answer if you have no questions. In other words, if your temperament is made to receive answers, you must first be initiated in the world of sorrow. Okay? Now, vasl means you've had an experience. Maybe God has revealed himself to you. Maybe you've had some sort of an experience where you feel as if you are part of life, not separate from it. That you're not fragmented, a house divided unto itself, 1,001 different pieces. You know, you kind of just see your own reflection in every aspect of life. That's vasle. You know, it's kind of like the book of Enoch, you know, Enoch walked and God was with him. And it's like there wasn't a place where Enoch could go where God wasn't there. And you know, if you have God walking next to you, there is no longing about you. There is no sorrow about you. You're just joyous, you know. So that is what Vasl means. And the problem with Vasl is that, I mean, imagine, you know, you go out somewhere and you like a guy. I mean, how does it start? You look at them, something happens to you, then you have to kind of summon up the courage to go ask for the number, then you have to call or text, then you have to be able to be creative enough to have a conversation that's about 2-3 hours long. Then before you hang up, you say, would you like to have coffee tomorrow? And then you must also have the courage to hear the negative. No, I don't think I'm interested. Or, you know, the more positive would be, yes, I'd be more than happy to. And then after going out with this person for a few weeks, say, is he ever going to hold my hand? Because what you want is union. And this is no longer a union in abstraction. You don't want to understand the way he or she thinks about something, you know? And then, you know, your imagination blossoms even further. You know, I want our shoulders to touch. I want him or her to kiss me. I want to, you know, be more intimate with this person. And that's union, that the two bodies are now laying next to each other. And while in love, you also have the union of not just the bodies, but also the emotions, the intellect, and the souls. In some way, I suppose, you know, you don't really think about those moments in this way. You're just one inside yourself, and the other person is one inside themselves, and the two ones come together. And unlike a mathematical equation where 1 + 1 = 2, in this case 1 + 1 equals an explosion of 1, you know. There is no union if you haven't felt alienation, if you haven't felt separation. You know, the next concept in the second line is that you know, there are those who desire union, but there are also those who desire separation. You know, in union you have answer. Finally, all the questions that you had on the spiritual path about who you are, what you are, your purpose, your meaning, do you have a soul, is there a God, what happens when you die? Some people are lucky enough to have all those questions answered for them. But this guy says, you know, there are those who don't care for union. What they really want, what they really desire, is to be in this constant, continuous state of longing, of separation, where they can cry, they can meditate, they can pray, they can feel this angst, and out of this angst they write poetry, they go and study philosophy, they paint, they go for long walks. You know, to have this longing, I mean, this thing you have in the Gospels, you know, Son of Man has no place to rest his head. I mean, that's kind of like Baba Taher in Jesus Christ. You know, that there is something about you that can never find rest as long as he or she is alive. There is this thing about Krishnamurti. apparently, Aldous Huxley was also very restless, and one of the ways that he found anchor was by meeting Krishnamurti. And one of the things he had mentioned about Krishnamurti is that what was so amazing about Krishnamurti was that uh, Huxley was looking for answers. When you read, for example, the perennial philosophy and his other ideas, they're just filled with how-tos, So his temperament was one of longing, but a sort of longing that in the background always desired rest. Krishnamurti, on the other hand, that wasn't the case. And that's what Huxley noticed in him, that he's a man who enjoys being restless. He always asks but never has any answers, or doesn't really care for answers. Even when you listen to his lectures on YouTube, even when he's 90, he doesn't tell you to sit and do A, B, C, D. He kind of just tells you left and right that there is nothing about life. There is nothing about belief systems. There is nothing about God. There is nothing about soul that can really put your mind, put your soul at ease or at rest. It never happens. Because if you're a human being, if you were to really sum up Krishnamurti in a couple of words, if you're a human being, you're always in the business of self-deception. Always. And in some ways it's like Gurdjieff, Okay, so you say to yourself that you deserve to rest, that you should go for a walk, that you should sit and watch some TV, that you should go to your friends and have a good time. And then Gurdjieff says, well, what exactly have you done that deserves rest now? Your entire day you've been mindless, you've been unaware, you've been sloppy in thinking and feeling. And so you want really rest from just being lazy. You want rest for being sloppy, And it's a devastating place to be. So if you connect the first line to the second line, or the second line to the first line, it would be this. I want sorrow because sorrow signifies separation. Separation forces the expression of longing and yearning, crying, weeping, praying. I like them. There are those who begin their life with sorrow, but they're looking for answers, and in answers they find union. And in union, there is no longing. In union, there is just joy, oneness, absence of separation. The third line, من از درمان و درد و وصل و هجران. So on the spiritual path, there are 4 steps or 4 keys or 4 ways to be. من از درمانو. If you're asking me, do I desire pain or sorrow? Do I desire remedy? Do I desire separation? Or do I desire union? There are only 4 stages you can belong to. Really, namely 2, but let's just say 4. Okay? And this could be true for any part of life. You're single, you don't really know what to do with your singleness, so you long to have a boyfriend or a girlfriend. You have a boyfriend or a girlfriend, but deep down you long to be single. So he's basically saying that I can either be in union or separation, have longing or have answers. I don't know. And that's the fourth line. And the fourth line is really quite devastating because it demands you to have certain qualities. In the fourth line it says, I will accept any of the four given to me by God. پسندم آنچه که جانان پسندد. Janan is beloved or God. That don't ask me which one to choose because I don't have the power. You know, it's kind of like the, you know that scene, I'm not quite sure which gospel, where Jesus is whipped in the courtyard and he's given, you know, this, they put this thorn around his head and he walks back to Pontius Pilate and Pontius looks at him and says, and initially he feels kind of bad. He says, well, what do you have to say for yourself? And Jesus doesn't say anything. And Pontius, you know, it's, I mean, you know, you send the guy out there and his body's fine. He comes back, he's all bloodied. You know. And if you're a Pontius and you see this horrifying scene, you know, you want this guy to say something to you. He doesn't say anything. And Pontius looks at him and says, don't you want to defend yourself? Don't you know I have the power to crucify you? And at that point, Jesus kind of looks at him and says, you would have no power over me if it wasn't given you from above. It is such an amazing thing to say, that you are Pontius because God wants you to be there, this particular position. I am whipped because through you, God is doing this to me. And I accept it. It's painful, but I accept it. You know? And I mean, you would think someone like Baba Taher would kind of figure out who he is, what his temperament is like. That he actually is at a place where he can make choices and decisions for himself in his life, but that's not what he does. You know, he has this thing called faith. Whatever happens to me is because of God. I am alone because of God. I am with this person because of God. Events happen to me in my life because of God. You know, even when your parents divorce, you don't say, well, they divorced. You say, God made them divorce. You know, and when you say that, it means that there are these key lessons in the event that took place 20 years in your life. It's there for you to learn something. You know, and that requires a tremendous amount of faith. پسندم آنچه که جانان پسندد. And ultimately it means, you know, I have no will. I am inwardly submitted to God. If God wants to give me joy, I'll accept it. If He wants to give me sorrow, I'll accept it. If He wants me to be in a state of separation, longing and yearning, I'll accept it. If He wants to reveal Himself to me, I'll accept it. You know, I know Baba Taher is strong to be poetic. You know, and make sure that the lines, you know, they're all rhyming and but I think if you're on the spiritual quest, and I don't mean to kind of mystify this quest, if your life has a lot of questions in it, and you're trying to figure out where exactly you belong in the grand scheme of things, if you're no longer caring for money, you're no longer caring for, if you basically you're no longer caring for your life, it means that those things that used to give you value, meaning, relevance, identity no longer do, which means that you're now in a different stage in your life where maybe you're beginning on your intellectual quest, and after a while that ceases to be interesting, and now you get to be on the spiritual quest. You're talking about things that are abstract, way out there. I think whenever you find yourself on the spiritual quest, you're going to be contaminated by joy, and none of this is your doing. It either comes upon you, okay, and it's going to stay with you for a long time, or it'll just depart after like 5 seconds. You will have moments of joy, you will have moments of sorrow, you'll have moments of separation, and you will have moments of union. So it's quite possible that in a single, say, span of 10 minutes, you're quite happy and joyous. All of a sudden something happens and you don't know how or why. Your head kind of goes downward and you kind of just feel this sorrow and you don't know where it came from. That it seems like the angels up there, they look at my soul and they say, okay, he or she has had enough fun. Let us sow inside their soul, seeds of sorrow. And within like a couple of seconds, you're enormously sorrowful, And then you're, in the midst of sorrow, and all of a sudden you feel as if you're connected to something. 10 seconds later, you feel separation. And I think the point is, because there's a poem in Divan Shams. It's a set of poems that Rumi dedicated to Shams. And in one of them, if I can remember it, ما ز بالاییم و بالا می رویم، ما ز دریاییم و دریا می رویم، ما از اینجا و از آنجا نیستیم، کشتی نوحیم. I forget, but what it's saying is this: I'm neither from above nor am I from below. I'm neither dust nor am I light. It's like I have no hands and I have no feet. I am stuck in the midst of this tornado. And one moment I go here, next moment I go there. And I think that's what the poem is all about. That if you're truly on the spiritual path, whatever that may be for you, you're going to have moments of rest. You're going to have great moments of unrest. You're going to have moments of peace and calmness because of rest. And you're going to have great moments of sorrow because of unrest. But whatever your position may be, whatever your inner state may be, have enough faith where you're surrendered, where you say, God's will be done. It's a very, very difficult place to be, because oftentimes you want to figure out why your life is just being the way it is. You're looking for a solution, and it's kind of your and there is nothing wrong with trying to figure things out, as long as you don't muddy the water even some more. You know the saying that it takes 2 years to build a house and maybe 10 minutes to burn it down. 6 of us in this room, we've tried so hard for the past 20, 30, 40 years to build our houses. You have a job, you're married, you have children, you have savings, you have a house, a car. You've made so many sacrifices, willingly or unwillingly, to make your house happen. You encounter, like the rich young man, Jesus. And within 10 minutes, Jesus kind of burns down your house. And that initiates you into the spiritual quest. Whatever that may mean for you, that depends on how you see Jesus, what you see inside him, how it makes you feel. The sort of questions and curiosities he inspires. And then you go back to your house. It's a house, it's just not a home. For some cruel, strange, odd reason, you're now, even though you live in this nice little place, you feel homeless. You spend 40 years building this house and he just destroys it in 10 minutes. And begins your longing, begins your separation, begins your alienation, begins your feeling of estrangement. And it's really difficult to kind of watch your house burn down. You have all these memories. You must have been profoundly ambitious to have built this house for yourself. And now you simply watch it burn down. And you don't even care for it being burnt down. But what do you do now? You have lots of sorrow without any answers. Once in a while, in the midst of sorrow, you get glimpses of union that gives you answers. But the moment you try to hold on to it, it escapes again. And that's how it is. Until when you become really, really mature on this path, what will happen is this. By then, you will have grown such a thick skin where you can live with sorrow, remedy, union, separation. It just becomes a way of life for you. You make no plans. You don't even plan your lectures in the classroom. Because you're a spokesperson for the human experience called the humanities. You're a spokesperson for love and wisdom called philosophy. And you have no idea. You walk in the classroom at 9 o'clock. You have no idea if love is going to enter your soul at 9:15. And if it enters, you got to trash your lesson for the day. And you have to allow that emotion to just kind of guide you. And it's a horrifying place to be. But there will come a time where you're seasoned enough, mature enough. You have enough faith in yourself and in, I suppose, forces that are out there, where you say, okay, thy will be done. Imagine now, Cassie, if I was to sit and write all of this down in a coherent way. This is one single poem, and he has about 100 of them. All of his poems are the same. All of them. They are filled with brokenness and anguish and longings and yearnings. He may have just a couple that are relatively happy, but for the most part, he really enjoys being sad. It inspires him. به کشت خاطرم جز غم نرویه، به باغم جز گل ماتم نرویه، به صحرای دل بی حاصل ما گیاه ناامیدی هم نرویه. You know, that in the desert of my soul, it is so barren that not even this plant or flower of hopelessness, not even that can grow. Nothing grows. He is completely empty of anything that could help anything grow. He's got nothing in him. There is really no good English translation of Baba Taher. Maybe.